engage with you as the stakeholders also in this project, and tell you a bit about how we'd like your assistance and how you could also get involved with this project, which is quite exciting, we think. We've got an hour. This is the overall agenda of what we'd like to talk about. I'll start by giving a short introduction to Natconsumers. We'll then follow on to Anita, who's part of CFO, and also she's going to give us a brief update on the first workshop that was held as part of Natconsumers project. This was one where we were looking at what are the major factors influencing energy consumption across all of Europe. Then I'll give an introduction to work package 3, some more detail on that. This is work package looking at some of the socio-demographic and other variables affecting consumers of energy in Europe. Then I'll pass on to Zsolt in Hungary as part of Arios. They're leading on work package 4, which looks at consumer profiles across Europe. And then to work package 5 leaders, ECSC in Asturias. They'll be talking about really the main outputs of this project, which is defining a framework for producing natural language feedback to consumers. Then to RSE in Italy, our colleague Simone there will be talking about how we'll be assessing the impacts of the project. Then finally there'll be a discussion session at the end, hopefully about 15 minutes to talk through your questions. As Zsolt mentioned at the start of this, because there's quite a number of you, we're putting people on mute to minimize background noise. But if you're using the version of this, you'll see that there's a little box down here called chat. That's an option for you to raise any questions. I'll be chairing this meeting, so I'll keep an eye on that as we go, and this will be a chance to address these at the end of the session. But please feel free to raise issues as and when they come up while you're thinking. So, just briefly to give a summary of the overall objectives of Natconsumers. This is a project which is about developing a user-centered framework for giving energy efficiency feedback to households. This comes in within the context of the EU strategy to reduce energy usage by 20% and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As you know, most of the policies in Europe have focused on technological issues and thermal improvements to the residential building supply. But this project will then focus more on the behavioural aspects of energy use, and we're looking at how we can harness the large-scale rollout of smart meters, which is happening across Europe, and then utilise the masses of information from this, and then from this generate something that can provide consumers with effective and emotionally intelligent feedback about their energy consumption and their energy habits in order to change those into something more sustainable. On the consortium, we've got 10 partners.
Pues le voy a decir acá. Entonces ya, bienvenidos a la reunión, como te dice aquí, si utilizas, es que no sé cómo hay que unirse, como, bueno, pues como Cars y Drive.
Welcome. As part of the consortium, we have 10 members. We've Arios in Hungary, BDI in Spain, RSE in Italy, SDS, who are a design company based in Belgium, consumer agency based in Italy, ECSC, who are our academic computer partners in Spain, CFO, sociological research agency, VASA and Traxis and the Energy Saving Trust. We're all energy usage research organizations. So the project happens over 2 years, ending in February of 2017. We're so far into our 7th month of the project. Overall we have 8 work packages. 3 of these are related to the consolidation of our network and exploiting the results of the work. We're going to hear a little bit today from work packages 3, 4, 5 and 6. These mainly focus on, these are about generating outputs from the project, and work pack 6, which is assessing the overall impact of the work that we've done to date. I'm now just going to pass over to Anita in CIFO, who's going to tell us a little bit about the project that was held in the end of August and September in Oslo.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, I'm going to present the main results of the first workshop that was held in Oslo, the 3rd and 4th September 2015. Just take this away. And during this workshop, we basically exchanged knowledge and discussed factors influencing residential energy consumption. The first day we identified these factors, and the next day we classified them and categorized them in 3 different categories: actionable factors, factors that can be pushed upon, and non-actionable factors. And the participants were 19 project partners and 12 especially invited external energy experts. We came from different countries: Norway, Finland, the UK, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Hungary, the Czech Republic and Greece. And we represented different sectors: research, businesses, organizations and regulators. And we had 4 goals in this workshop, and one of them was to establish an overview of consumer patterns across Europe. A working hypothesis was that consumers' energy practices vary between 4 different European regimes: Southern, Western, Central and Northern Europe. And based on the workshop discussions, we concluded that at a general level, consumers' energy practices vary to some extent between 4 different European regimes: Southern, Western, Central and Northern Europe. For example, northern parts of Europe use more energy due to a colder climate and use less gas than other parts of Europe. However, most differences go across these boundaries, such as differences in climate, insulation, energy sources, lifestyles, appliances, comfort, price and supply. And these factors may also vary within the same European regime. The other goals of the workshop was to establish a structure for defining European consumer practices, to identify main barriers of customer engagement for a more sustainable energy consumption, and to consolidate the path to establish a natural language for promoting sustainable residential energy practices. And also here, based on the discussions, we concluded that barriers to a more sustainable energy consumption can be classified alongside a dimension going from actionable factors at the one extreme and non-actionable factors at the other. The actionable factors represent the factors that we are able to intervene by means of natural language, and hence they also represent the framework within which current consumer practices have to be changed. Yeah, that was pretty much the report from CIFO.
Thanks. Thank you, Anita. I'd now like to go on to talk a little bit about the project that the Energy Saving Trust I'm part of is leading. That's work package 3. so this work package in the context of the wider project is basically helping us to make the advice that the Natconsumers project would give out to be as effective and as relevant to consumers. For our advice to be this, we need to make sure that what we give out is relevant to the situation in which the householders live, and is something which is actionable by those. From the workshop which Anita described, we've understood that consumers right across Europe find themselves in different situations. From the research that we've carried out, we know that obviously different individuals have different values, different attitudes and behaviours and knowledge, and these, we're exploring the extent to which these impact on people's energy use. Within this work package, we're trying to come up with a framework that we can understand how we can characterise consumers from across Europe, understand what factors affect how they use energy, and come up with essentially a classification system for different consumers across Europe, and also understand the best ways within different countries that we can identify what data we need to collect about those consumers in order for us to characterise them, and what are effective means of collecting that data. The work package basically is in 4 stages, which can kind of broadly be clumped together in 2 things. We're undergoing the work package at the moment, which is reviewing the evidence about previous profiling of consumers that has happened before. Thanks to partners in the stakeholder community, we've received over 100 papers, and partners on the Natconsumers panel have helped us to summarise those papers, and we're now going through a process of writing up those findings to identify what are the key factors that influence consumers' energy consumption and their attitudes towards energy usage. The next part of the project, kicking off in the new year, will be then, once we've identified those factors, we'll be developing a survey in order to collect that data about in certain partner countries, and we'll be trying to suss out from that survey which of those factors can successfully and accurately be collected about consumers across Europe. Then once we have that, we'll be able to write up a methodology that could then be replicated in other situations. So today, as I already mentioned, we've collated 100 papers, and our partners have provided summaries of those. We'll be submitting a draft evidence review report at the end of this month, and then following on in the new year, once we've identified those factors, we'll be designing the survey and collecting data in partner countries. I'm now just going to give you a little overview of what we found so far in the literature review. Some of these things match up with what Nita was talking about. Broadly speaking, from the literature we have reviewed, we can see that there are factors which can be classified into a sort of hierarchy of 3. These are psychological and knowledge factors, the individual context that a householder or a consumer would find themselves, and then the wider context, the broader landscape and socio-technical system that individuals find themselves in. To give a bit more insight into what we mean by these things, the wider socio-technical system, these are things such as the physical climate, which, as Anita has already identified, can really affect the energy use in the home, from whether you need to cool your home or whether you need significant amount of energy to heat your home. Cultural things, technological development within the country that you find yourself in, or merely sort of the infrastructure within which energy is supplied to your home, financial and political issues around how energy systems are governed in your country. These are factors which are not something that the Natconsumers project will aim to influence in any way. However, these are important to be taken into consideration whenever we're providing advice or messaging to consumers, as this forms the background against which all decisions about energy usage are made. Secondly, the sort of narrowing in on the pyramid, we have the individual context. So this is the factors which govern a consumer's individual situation, such as the characteristics of the buildings that they live in. Larger homes naturally consume more energy than smaller homes. They need more space heating, or they need more lighting. There's also the context of the technological ownership, the number of appliances which people own, socio-demographic things such as age, how affluent or wealthy a household is to afford certain services, and also then the social norms. So what is considered normal energy use amongst the peers in which an individual consumer finds themselves within. And then finally, we have the psychological and sort of knowledge factors. This is what governs this is how we can characterize individuals' consumers' attitudes towards energy usage and the sort of broader, more inherent values, and then also their knowledge. What this might not be considered psychological in a sense, is still how much understanding is there of what a consumer can do to be more sustainable in their energy use patterns. So when considering the importance of these three factors, as I've said, the wider context is focuses on is kind of important in terms of a context setting for which messaging should be sympathetic to. We know that in terms of the individual context, that a household level, things to do with building, technology, ownership, and affluence, some of the most powerful predictors of overall household energy consumption, and also this restricts the choices and the actions which an individual can make in relation to sustainable energy usage. Also, there's psychological variables which studies have shown these have limited importance often when explaining current energy use, but these are very important factors in terms of providing the link between the context and the situation that an individual finds themselves in and their ability to or willingness to act. These are obviously psychological factors, are not something which will always govern people's behaviours in a fixed and seemingly rational way, but they are important in terms of when we govern how we might decide to talk to people in a natural and an emotionally intelligent way to take into account consumers, their values and their attitudes. So as we just finally, studies have shown that a number of studies have shown that socio-demographic factors are more important than these psychological factors. But so papers such as the one by Abrahams and Steg, this is because previous studies looking at psychological factors have not held certain socio-demographic variables constant. when these socio-demographic variables are held constant, we actually find that psychological variables can influence energy usage. Also important is these contextual factors, as these are really important in how they constrain people's relationship between their context and their potential to act in new and more sustainable ways. So I'd just like to finish there in terms of what we found with work package 3, and I'll hand over now to Jot et Ariosh to talk about work package 4.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, I hope you all see my screen now. I will talk about work package 4, which is one of the most technical work packages in the project. What we will do, we will collect smart meter data for the countries where we have some pilots or where there's a large-scale rollout. We will run a characterization of these load profiles, meaning that we will also try to collect some demographic data together with the energy usage, and we will try to produce some load profiles for different type of households. Let's say households in the north and in the south where is relevant, households with one person or with 2 persons or with children and so on. So this is one of our tasks, and the second one is a classification of the consumers by demographics, attitudes and behavior related to energy usage. We will run some surveys, probably in 4 countries in Europe, one in North, one in Western Europe, one in Central, and one in South. We will collect some basic data about their demographics, about the building characteristics, is it renovated or not, is it a flat or is it a detached house. We will ask questions about how many and which type of electrical appliances they use. And we will also ask questions about their attitudes and beliefs related to savings, energy savings, and also to environmental protection. Okay, and as this segmentation will allow us to talk the language our consumers talk, because we know from previous studies and also from experience that to some consumers we can talk the language of saving, money saving, and this is the relevant context they understand. Why for others, mainly a single person households or household with few people, energy saving is not so relevant on individual level and is much relevant to talk about common values like environmental protection. Okay, how we will go during the project, our project, and what is the idea of the rollout, because it's important to mention that our project is a pilot one, so we will pilot the framework, but we won't have access to all kind of data, and during the rollout, when it's really a real case, then it will be much easier, and the energy utility company or the consultancy company will have access to much more data. So during this project, we will connect smart meter data and the demographics, as said before. Then we will compute some benchmark profiles. By benchmark, I mean it can be the users in one city or in one neighborhood, depending on the quality of the data we can have access to. What we know from previous studies that neighborhood is the most important benchmark for consumers. So they like to be compared to similar people living in the similar city or in the similar town. Okay, then we will decide what to communicate to the households. We will see, for example, that one household has high consumption during weekday evenings, and then we will try to find out, based on all data we know about this household, what could be the problem. Maybe, I don't know, they have a television set or other appliance which consumes too much. And we will try to give to this household a targeted advice how to reduce energy consumption during weekday evenings. And then we will decide how to communicate, which language to be used. Some cases it could be based on individual values, mainly energy saving. In other cases it should be rather a reference to common values like reducing of CO2 emission. Okay, when we will finish the project and we will handle the technology to energy utilities and also to other companies, in the rollout phase, how I called it, the idea is that households will participate voluntarily to some projects, mean that they have already the smart meter installed, and when they join this program, they will answer a few questions related to demographics, the building, the usage of appliances, and so on. So how we call it a golden questionnaire, which should be answered. And based on this golden questionnaire, we will classify the consumers in different segments. Then the Natconsumers program will decide to which benchmark this household should be compared. Is it a single household or it's a multi-person household, and which is the right benchmark to use. Then we will continue using the smart meter data on these households. And based on all the information we have about the households, meaning this consumption data, also historical consumption data, the benchmark we want to use, and the communication segment we decided, we will be able to send regular messages to this household using the simplest tool, the energy bill, but also we can use internet or smartphone applications. Okay, currently we have smart meter data from 3 or 4 countries, from UK, from Hungary, Italy, Spain. Some of them are bigger, like UK and Hungary. Some of them are small cases, only a few hundred cases from Italy and Spain. So we really need the support of energy utilities here. We need your support. And if you have access to any kind of pilot data, even on the regional level or a city level, we would be glad to cooperate with you and use your data available for piloting. Okay, finally, just 2 words about segmentation. As Greg mentioned, we are working on literature review now. There are a number of good consumer segmentation studies in Europe, UK, Switzerland, Hungary, Germany, Spain, a number of countries. We will use these segmentation studies as learnings, a starting point. Then we will decide in which countries to conduct the consumer segmentation, probably 4 countries in 4 different regions. And finally, we will run an online survey on national representative samples using around 1,000 to 1,200 interviews per country. And based on these consumer surveys, online surveys, we will run the segmentation using clusterization techniques. Okay, that's it about work package 4. And now I will handle it to Greg to continue. Please, Greg, you can go on. Just give me a second to switch the presenter. Okay, it's done.
Thank you, Jolt. I think we're now going to pass on to ECSC and to Roberto.
Hi, I am going to present the Work Package 5, the collaboration that we have in the project. And I am going to start telling us a very short history about Natconsumers that is based in a virtual being. Nat is an artificial being that wants to help humans to save energy at home. many Europeans would like to save energy, but either they are not conscious of how much they spend on energy, or they do not know how to save it. NAT, this artificial being, is preparing textual messages customized to every European electricity consumer about saving energy and promoting sustainable habits. And in order to choose the most suitable message, NAT needs to explore 4 different components of each situation type. Who is the consumer that will receive my message? What is their consumption profile? What are the opportunities for saving energy? How do we organize the communication with each specific consumer? This slide shows the architecture we have proposed for NAT. It is built around the concept of natural language generator. Natural language generator is a process that uses our experience using natural language in the application domain to generate these customized linguistic messages. As input, what we need is one consumer, to choose one consumer, that is the one that is going to receive our message, and we need to analyze his specific consumption profile, and we need to decide one of the opportunities that this specific consumer has for saving energy. And finally, we need to know which is the stage of the communication we have with this specific consumer. I mean, we need to know if it is the first time we address with this consumer, or maybe we are insisting after several times of several messages on a particular way of summary. The natural language generator will use a model of our experience energy to generate the appropriate message for each situation type. This slide is showing a first approach to the concept of experience using natural language in the application domain. It's just a first idea. In the blue rectangles represent choices that we must do, and the orange one is represent the collection of examples that we must have. Work Package 3 and Work Package 4 should provide us with answering to the question, who is the consumer? A classification of consumers. We need a classification of European consumers. Workshop 2, that is is going to be realized very soon, and Work Package 4 should help us to identify different types of consumption. Is the answer to the question, what is their consumption profile? The past Workshop 1 in Oslo has served for explore the opportunities for saving energy that we have in Europe. So we have started to identify possibilities of saving energy. And Workshop 3 and Work Package 5 should deliver identification of different stages in the communication process, a way of organizing the communication with customers. Finally, the orange rectangle corresponds with a corpus that should be a result of Work Package 5 that consists of a collection of examples of suitable messages for each situation type. In summary, we will organize a collection of messages to cover the whole set of combinations that we can realize. To end my presentation, we have had these ways of collaborating with Natconsumer Work Package 5. There are several ideas. For instance, you could collaborate with us by providing us with critical review of the current Work Package 5 plan, providing us with information and review about other projects that provide this kind of feedback projects, in this case of informative billing, information and review about other examples of communication that also they were tailored to the consumer segment, and helping us to make this needed collection of advices for saving electrical energy. And that's all, Greg.
Thank you, Gracian. Apologies, I said that we were passing over to Roberto, but it was Gracian speaking. We're now going to pass over to Simone in RSE, who's going to talk about Work Package 6.
Okay, thanks everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks, Simone.
Okay, so I'm Simone Maggiore from RSE. Now we will present the objective of Work Package 6, which is basically the last work package of Natconsumers, and we'll conclude, we'll give an assessment framework for to see how the natural language feedback system can also impact also on the national power system. In particular, we want to define, which is the main objective, define an impact assessment framework in order to quantificate the effect of the measure implemented by natural language feedback in the national power system, to see how the action which are held at the residential level, basically done by users, which are performed on a residential at the single household level, can also have effect on the national level. So to have this bottom-up approach, and in particular to quantificate these impacts of this indirect feedback system on the national power system. And we want to build different scenarios in order to make a comparison among them, and to see how the different impacts can also have different results, and see how a measure or a single measure, how they are coupled together, can have different impacts on the national power system. In particular, we are still deciding the year horizon, in particular between 2020 and 2030, in order to see the effects also on the medium-long term, and in order to take into account also different evolution of this system. Because here in RSE we have built a model of the national power system, in particular in Italy and also in some other European countries. And so we'll extend this model also to the countries which are not covered by our model, and see how this effect can be modeled also at the European level. In particular, we will run the simulation at a single country level, but we'll also include a macro region in order to take into account also the complexity and the exchange between different countries, in particular neighboring countries. And in order to build this model, we start also, as I said before, with a bottom-up approach. I mean, with a detailed description of the national power plants, all the distributed generation, which, for example, in Italy, particular photovoltaic power and windmills, which make a consistent part of the national generation, and see how the effect of the indirect feedback can have also on this national grid. Like, for example, the cut of the national or the load peak level, for example, of the shift of the consumption from 1 hour to another, and see how the price on the wholesale market is affected by this change in particular. And if it's possible, we will also want to simulate different regions among the countries. I mean, we have this model for Italy, so if it will be possible, we'll also simulate this specificity, like this more detailed description for each country, also for other countries. And this will give us the opportunity to test and to prove that this indirect feedback system not only can have benefits for the residential house, for the single household, who can also can save money and improve the quality of his service, but also on the national level. I mean, for all the other, for the all-electric system, the all-electric power system, and therefore these benefits can also be quantified and used to promote the development of this indirect feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. So we'd now like to finish the session by passing the floor over to people listening into this conversation. We've not had any questions yet come through on the chat, but please, if there's anything you'd like us to explain further about how we're approaching this project, if you've got any comments or already good ideas about how you think any ideas about how you think we can improve the way that we're working, or I think is addressing some of the key issues that both Zoltan and Gracian have raised about participation, particularly looking at ways we can obtain better energy use data about consumers, and also feedback about other similar projects that might have worked giving consumers advice based on smart meter data. So, over to you.
Just a technical comment, I unmuted all the microphones, so please you can ask your questions or add your comments. Thank you.
So it looks like Julia is trying to talk, but we can't hear her. Julia, if you'd like to type your comment, I'll read it out loud, and hopefully we can respond.
Well, her microphone is unmuted, so I don't know why she cannot be heard.
I am Javier from Spain, from OCU, sorry. This is our first meeting with you, and we need to know more details about this project. But we are really interested in this project. But please, we can access to the documentation of the previous meeting in Oslo.
Anita, would you be able to?
Oh, yeah, okay. Could you repeat the question, please?
No, it's only to know if we had the possibility to access to some to the documentation or some of the reports that you talked in the presentation, that the previous document that you analyzed in the Oslo meeting.
Well, there is written a report that will be launched as soon as the European Commission has approved it, and it will be placed on the Natconsumers home site.
Okay.
Yeah, so you will have the list, you might say, of actionable and not
available when the EC has agreed to it, but at least the presentations are on the website.
Okay.
So for those of you who are not aware, the website is
Muted.
.eu.
Yes.
And so the question that Julia has asked is, are we going to use an opt-in approach with consumers? I suppose that's a question in relation to accessing consumers' smart meter data. Perhaps, Joel, maybe is that something that you'd be able to talk about?
Unmuted.
Yes, I can add what I mentioned also about Work Package 4, that we have access to some data in few countries, but in most of the cases this data is a very small scale. So only 300, 500 consumers in one given region. So if any utility company or a consultancy company or authority has an access to wider data set, then we would be very happy to talk to you about how we can use that data, how you can handle it. Of course, we will use only anonymous data, so we don't need personal data. We don't want to identify the energy users. And we will make sure that we will respect the data privacy laws and rigors established by the European Commission.
And Julia, you're right. If we were to use an opt-in approach, then we would probably have a biased sample. Here, the idea, though, is we are not going to do a pilot with consumers directly. We will use smart meter data sets. On top of this, we will do surveys representative with a representative sample at the national or local level, depending what smart meter data we have. So for the surveys, it will be representative, so it will not be opt-in. For the smart meter data, it will be existing databases. So again, it's not really opt-in either.
Hello, my name is Pep Salas. I'm from Enerbike in Barcelona. I could not attend, unfortunately, the last meeting that you had in September. Hopefully, I will do it sooner, maybe in Madrid. And I just want to introduce myself. I provide here our website and my contact details. We are a small company, a startup company. We started 2-3 years ago, developing a user engagement tool for energy efficiency in households. We use as a business model a B2B2C, so to reach customers and users, we use both utilities or maybe a smart city. And we are currently serving our IT platform to the city of Barcelona, to the 15 municipalities in the north of Spain, and then some customers through a utility. It's 10,000 people close by Barcelona. So this pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm quite in contact with Roberto from Asturias, and also I met yesterday Thomas also from this consortium for a meeting that we had in Barcelona regarding Smart Cities Expo Congress. And whatever I can help or whatever you can ask me, it will be a pleasure to answer. So thank you for considering us a potential collaborator in this project.
Thank you. Sarah Darby, who's one of the leading thinkers in the UK on energy feedback, has raised a question, which is asking when we how are we going to consider information that people already have about their energy use and what the energy conversation looks like in each country. I think this is an important context issue which we should be bearing in mind, in that within sort of what we've defined as the wider landscape, is that in different countries there are obviously different overall levels of engagement with energy efficiency, behavioural messages, and people might come across different levels around that conversation. Secondly, an important question which has came up quite a lot in workshop 1 is whether this project is just about electricity or does it also include gas. Now I think we've determined that this project will focus on electricity, but we need to bear in mind that heating use makes up a substantial part of people's energy use, and different countries, such as in the UK, gas is used primarily as a heating fuel, whereas electricity is used much more in Scandinavian countries and elsewhere as a heating fuel. Finally, I think a good point which Sarah raises is beware of using attitudes as a predictor or indicator of anything, which I think that's similarly something that we found within our literature review, that we found that values are, as opposed to attitudes, sort of the much more sustained collection of values, attitudes is by far more useful way of considering how we can communicate our messages, but not necessarily a predictor of people's current energy use.
And Greg, maybe I can add something. Thank you, Sarah, for your question. I think in practically speaking, we will take into account the fact that we start with different levels of awareness and knowledge about energy consumption in different countries. So this will be captured when we do the surveys. We will try to capture this, and logically speaking, in a household that's much more aware, knowledgeable already, will receive more difficult or demanding messages. So we go gradually, I would say. We don't start at the same level, and we increase the complexity gradually. Regarding gas and electricity, it was indeed a point that was raised, and of course for the UK, for France, Italy, it's very important to take gas into account. What we thought of doing was we will focus on electricity, but we want the methodology to be applicable to gas as well. So this is one way we want to be sure we don't just look at electricity, we also want to look at gas.
Thank you, Christoph. So we're running a little over time, but as we started 5 minutes later, perhaps there's a chance for just one more question, if anybody has any.